Welcome to Total Retail Talks, your podcast channel for retail knowledge.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Total Retail Talks. I'm Joe Keenan, Editor-in-Chief of Total Retail. I am joined on today's episode by Ryan Bartlett, the founder and CEO of direct-to-consumer menswear brand True Classic. Ryan and I are going to talk a little bit about kind of the origin story of True Classic and how it's rapidly grown into a $150 million business and some of the reasons that have contributed to that success. So thanks for joining me on today's show, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joe.
So I want to get us started by having you tell our audience a little bit about True Classic for those that might not yet be familiar with the company.
So True Classics is a men's basics company. We started out with just a single SKU of t-shirt, and now we've expanded to absolutely everything that you could think of other than shoes. So we're doing denim this year. We have performance line, we have sweats, we have socks, underwear, long sleeve tees, polos, just everything now that any guy could need. So we're kind of a one-stop shop. And pricing wise, we're kind of in the affordable range, but still with a very high quality product.
And I mentioned direct to consumer in the introduction of the brand. So obviously on the True Classic website, any other sales channels that you're currently utilizing?
Not yet. We are exploring that though as a growth opportunity. We are talking a lot about retail. We've seen a lot of success from some of our competitors in retail recently, even though it kind of goes against everything in my DNA to kind of push back against traditional markets. But, a lot of the people that we talk to are profitable, with most of their retail stores. So it's something we just can't ignore. And we also see the benefit of, getting people in there, getting them to touch the product, getting them to put it on and feel how great it is. So there's definitely some value there. And we're, exploring some opportunities with different real estate companies that can help us kind of build this out and scale it up. So it's exciting.
Yep. Yeah, and that's you're hearing more and more of that, of these kind of digital startup brands, D2C brands like True Classic that originate strictly online, but they are exploring physical retail. So that's an interesting point. Since you've told us a little bit about the company and the brand, why don't you go ahead and for our audience, tell us a little bit about yourself and your professional background.
Yeah, so I grew up in Northern Michigan. We grew up pretty poor, and I was surrounded by parents that were also business owners who were struggling business owners in the real estate market, which is not easy in Michigan. And I got to watch them kind of dig themselves out of debt and build a great company for themselves. So that was kind of my foundation, which was, great to see them be workaholics and just pour everything into it. But I was into music early on. Music came very naturally to me. Everyone told me that was my calling and that I should follow my dreams and talents. And so I thought that was going to be my future. And I went to school for it, got my degrees in all production, music business, entertainment business, and ended up, like a lot of people, getting out and doing absolutely nothing with any of it. So I think, I moved to LA and I was struggling just like everybody in the entertainment industry. And eventually I just decided that I wanted a family. I wanted a better life. I didn't want to be a struggling musician my whole life. So I got into digital marketing. I got into web development. I got into graphic design. I got a job at an SEO company. And I found out pretty quickly that there was a lot of money in SEO. And so eventually I started my own company, got to page one of Google for all my keywords for SEO company, Los Angeles, and built that over a decade. And it wasn't a huge business, but it's kind of running itself now. It's like a 6 or 7 employee operation. And that eventually kind of led me into all things marketing and creative. And then, when True Classic came along, it was an idea I was kind of throwing around in my head. And I saw a pretty big void in the market. as far as men's basics were concerned. I just felt like everybody was kind of mailing it in on the fit and the quality and kind of overcharging everybody. So
Yeah.
I just saw a real good opportunity to kind of get in and outwork all my competitors. And I was confident I could do a better job than all of them. And I didn't realize it would get to this level, obviously, but it turns out the TAM was a little bit larger than I realized. So that's kind of the nutshell version.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. And you mentioned you had that kind of start, that digital marketing, that SEO kind of experience, and then along comes the idea for True Classic. Maybe just kind of outline the timeline a little bit for
Yeah.
our audience. Tell us, when you founded True Classic. What you probably started it by yourself maybe, and then as it's grown, had to bring others on. Tell us a little bit about you talked a little bit about the inspiration. Tell us kind of
Yeah.
the story of when it was started and how you kind of got it launched.
So I started kind of getting obsessed with seeing all these stories in these Facebook groups about guys that were in third world countries building these tremendous businesses on the backbone of Facebook ads. And I got kind of obsessed with it. And I just went really deep into learning about Facebook's AI and how you can really start just about any product, test it out. And then if it scales, then you just keep pushing budgets until it goes to the moon and you run out of product. So I got really obsessed with that idea. And, once I decided that True Classic was kind of the way to go, I was able, this was probably early 2019. I was kind of tossing the idea around in my head. I built out, the IP, I built the website. I tried to do absolutely everything that I could to get it ready. And then at that point, this is probably middle of 2019, I was ready to launch.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, I still have my agency. So I was about to launch it myself and then kind of leverage my employees to help out. And then I just realized it was going to be way too much work. And I was just like, this is going to be impossible to run the agency and do this full time, or, start out as a side project and it eventually to become full time. So I called a buddy of mine who has been a longtime family friend, my buddy Matt. And I was just, he's really well connected in LA. And I thought there's no one better to contact that would know somebody in apparel. And sure enough, I called him. I'm like, hey, I'm about to launch this company, True Classic. I need some help on the apparel side. I don't know how to negotiate with these manufacturers. I need somebody who really knows their stuff. And he was just like, I got the perfect guy. And turns out that was Nick Ventura, who's one of the founders. And so he got us on the phone. We negotiated the equity right then and there,
Mm-hmm.
which turned out to be a lot more valuable than I realized at the time. So we negotiated it. And then Matt, has a strong finance startup and kind of M&A venture capital background. And so, Nick was like, we should probably think about bringing Matt on too, because he can figure out the financing. He can figure out how to get us credit terms with these manufacturers. And so I was like, great. And so we gave him equity, and that was really the start of it. And
Yeah.
it's just been an unbelievable partnership ever since.
And you guys, to your point, have some of those complementary skills. You being more of the creative mind, and then Matt coming in with more of that finance background, which is obviously important as you're launching a business. So you guys covering your bases
100%.
and complementing each other.
It was the perfect compliment. I mean, we were doing probably the work of about 15 people for the first 7 or 8 months. It was just the three of us doing absolutely everything. I was handling all things marketing. That means paid media. That means doing Google ads, Facebook, creative, doing email marketing, doing the SMS, just doing the SEO. And then Nick was handling all the vendor negotiations. He was working with the manufacturers to make sure we're getting the best product for the best price, doing all the sourcing. And then Matt was, working on trying to get us credit terms, basically, which was another huge advantage that we ended up getting early on. Was he had a relationship with a guy in manufacturing that was basically a handshake deal. We didn't have to sign anything. He was just like, you know what? I believe in you guys. I'm going to give you guys a chance. So he gave us a credit line. And so we didn't have to put any money into the business whatsoever.
Yeah.
We probably put a few $1,000 in at the very beginning of our own money. And the rest of it just really lived and died by this credit line. And then, as the sales would come in, we would just reinvest all the profits and sales back into the company and just kind of, keep that rinse and repeat momentum going.
Yeah, and you hear about so many founders going into such outrageous debt to kind of get their company started, and you guys had the leg up, with that financing deal in place. You really gave you a good head start. So we're only talking about a couple of years here, Ryan. So you're saying, the True Classic kind of mid 2019 getting started, and
so yeah, it was September 1st. I would say we officially launched 2019. So between September and the through fourth quarter, December 31st, we did about 250,000 in sales. And I would say probably by the first month and a half, we knew we were kind of onto something because it was building momentum on its own. And I was able to just keep scaling the Facebook budgets and just going and going. And then, so from Q1 of the next year to the end of the year, so 2020, we did 16 million over that year. And then the following year, we did like 94 million. So it just absolutely exploded out from under us. It became all our full-time jobs, obviously. The economics were all there. So it was insane.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about that kind of very rapid growth. Up to about a $150 million company in just kind of 2.5 years, essentially. Tell us a little about, your background in advertising may have, and the marketing you were able to do for the business. Maybe that's one of the factors. In your mind, what were some of the key factors that really propelled that rapid growth for True Classic?
Yeah, I mean, I like to tell people it's 743 things that get you there, because it's just absolutely executing on a million different things at the same time and kind of, being expert multitaskers. But I would say three things that kind of stand out to me are the fact that we're really known for executing very, very quickly, for better or worse. A lot of the people we talk to just say that they've never seen us work with vendors so quickly, and as far as like implementation and getting back to them. And it just really speaks to the culture of how the three of us work together. Is we just move at lightning speed, and we don't second guess ourselves. And then, we obviously mess up a ton along the way, kind of rolling like that. But we learn from it, right? Just like anything, you test it. If it doesn't work, you move the other way, or you test something else or a different vendor, whatever it is. You just keep things moving, and you leave yourself really flexible and dynamic. So that's kind of, I think, the first thing, is that we're always in agreement on everything too. If you have founders that have to constantly challenge each other and just don't get along, it obviously stifles the growth. So we're lucky that we very much agree on just about absolutely everything in the business, which has just made it really seamless, and it's given us a full runway to just grow to the moon. So I would say that's number one. Number two, I think, really is kind of what the foundation of True Classic is, and why it's been so successful, is that we just massively over-index on EQ and making sure that our internal culture with our employees, that everyone's getting everything they want. They have total autonomy, freedom, equity, benefits. Just you don't give your employees any reason to want to leave, right? You want to make a comfortable environment for them, and you want to really just give them everything. You want to give them goals. You want to give them room to move, and that creates a really safe place. And people work really hard for you when they have everything. So I would say that also bleeds into how we look at customers. We try to just give away everything we can on the customer side, which means, a good example is the creative. We create really funny ads, which in a sense is giving value to the customer in the form of entertainment, right? So we're not just kind of creating ads like everybody else. We're creating something that provides value, entertainment value. Of course, there's a reason for it to be there. We're selling something, but it doesn't mean you can't, make people smile and kind of create that emotional connection. So I would say that also the product itself, we're very intentional about the way we designed it. We built it for a man's body in an industry that doesn't really care about guys, or doesn't really think that guys care about the way something fits. And it's clearly untrue. So we were just very intentional about that. And we just try to do everything we can to make sure that the customer is getting what they want. Even on the customer service side, we have, best in class Ritz-Carlton level customer service. And if you read through like our Trustpilot reviews or any of the reviews on the website, you'll see a lot of nuggets in there from people explaining the experience and how they came very upset and how we just basically turned it all around for them. And we essentially, we eat a lot of bad situations just for the sake of them having a good situation. So even if they come to us after, say, the return date or the refund date, we usually just give them whatever they want, just to make sure that they're happy. And that's really what we're after. So just kind of, again, going back to the EQ and just making sure that we're aware of our, of our people and the customers that we're dealing with, and finding ways to just always drive max value to them. So I would say that's kind of number 2 pillar. The third one is kind of what you were referring to, which is the creative. If you're going to enter a space like ours, which is heavily commoditized, you're going to have to come at it from a different angle, and you're going to have to really work hard to stand out. And, I just knew early on that was going to be a battle, but I just felt confident that everyone in my space wasn't really doing a great job of it. And then when the comedy bit kind of came along, it probably came along, I would say, about a year into the company. I made a couple funny ads and they just blew up. And I looked at the ROAS and all the metrics, and they were blowing off the charts. I'd never seen anything like it. So that was just pretty obvious light bulb that went off on that day when we rolled that out. And I just said, we're going all in on comedy from here on out. I don't care what we do as far as creative is concerned. If it's not funny, I don't want it. And I just want to get it out there. I want to make people laugh. People were telling us in the comments that I'm just buying this shirt because I laughed at this ad. And it just really, it obviously worked for us. And now we're kind of the funny dad bod brand. And, we're still just trying to put out great stuff. So I would say, just going back, it's the execution, it's the EQ, and it's the creativity.
Yeah, and I think you've summed that up really nicely, and kind of painted a nice picture of how you've sustained that growth. But the other side of that is, I'm sure, wow, it's a great problem to have that you're growing so quickly. It does probably present some scaling challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about any challenges that might have presented themselves, whether it was just keeping up with demand in terms of inventory, supply chain, getting your product, that might have presented themselves, as I mentioned, as you grew so quickly.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem always with any e-com, is that what happens is that when you start doing really well, you start selling out because you didn't plan for it well enough, right? So like, data planning and forecasting is one of the most important positions in any of these companies that are doing this at scale. Really understanding your forecasting and working with finance and marketing to figure out what the right cadence is on your buys for your POs are insanely important. So we really struggled with this early on. We tried to hire, freelance demand planners, and it just didn't really work out that well, clearly, because we had tons of issues early on with staying with, and getting product at the right time and selling out. So what that ends up doing to the business is, well, number one, it's obviously a problem when you don't have product to sell. But then what you do is you overbuy, because then you start betting on yourself and going, oh, we could just sell to the moon. So then what happens is, we got into a situation where you overbuy on inventory. And then, as you know, that's how you sink businesses, because if you're not selling through that inventory, those POs keep coming, right? Like, you still have to pay those vendors. And if you don't have the revenue to support those invoices, then you're in big trouble. You got to go out and raise money or whatever you want to do. And we didn't want to do that. So luckily we have vendors, unbelievable vendors, that give us a lot of leeway. And I think that just speaks to kind of, again, the culture and the relationships we've built with them, is that you can really just sink or swim based on your credit line. So, that was a big challenge for us. And we're still working through those issues, because it's not a perfect science. And you want to give yourself enough upside, but you also don't want to bury the business. So we've been in tough situations where, they're forecasting a cash crunch that's coming around the bend, and you got to figure out how to make moves to either slow down those vendor payments or get some sort of credit line, outside of your manufacturing to kind of support the inventory. So we've had to do that. We've had to work with these companies, and companies like Wayflyer, where you basically give you a credit line to support your inventory, and then they get you through, and you pay obviously a big interest fee, but it'll save the business sometimes, if you have that, other than, raising money and going that route, which we are very much against. I'm really don't come from that startup world where you're just like raising and burning and raising and burning. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest struggle we've had, is just figuring out the demand planning.
Yep, you hear that so frequently for these particularly online startups that grow, and trying to keep up with that demand in terms of inventories and planning, as you noted. So we're really in the infancy stages of this business, and it's grown and shown tremendous promise. My question for you, Ryan, is tell us a little bit about kind of your plans and growth opportunities, what you're targeting as you look to not only sustain the momentum that you've already generated, but continue to build on it. You talk a little bit about maybe physical retail, maybe it's new product categories, technology investments. Tell us a little bit about some of the things that you're pinpointing for growth.
Yeah, technology wise, I would say that we just implemented this software called Measured, which helps you do like incrementality testing. So what that does is it helps you get efficiencies on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, so that if you're spending enough or not, because attribution is so difficult to really nail down, especially in platform metrics that are largely kind of lying to you about what the true attribution is. You need this external software to really dial it in and do these incrementality tests to give you the true data. So that is insanely important. That cannot be stated enough. It's just, you have to know what your true attribution is on paid media, especially when you're spending 200K a day like we are. That's a lot of money over the course of a year. So you really need to know where you land on paid media. So I would say that's kind of the first thing. We're honing in on that to know where to spend and how much to spend to figure out our return. But I would say growth wise, a lot of it comes down to products and choosing the right products for our customer base. So like I said earlier, we're rolling out denim this year. I think we crushed it on our denim. We're basically, making like an affordable high-end jean that you would find in a Nordstrom's, but you're going to be able to get it for like $50. So that's kind of the motif that we go through with all our products. We just take the best in class, we make it better, and then we just, we cut the price by 2/3. I would say that we're also looking at international as a pretty big lever. I know that Canada has worked really well for us. We're working with this company now called Global E, which is like they kind of like dial you into international, like without having to do all of the dirty work of, web development and making sure everything's good on your tariffs and taxes. And they kind of just plug you in and they get like a percentage of revenue, which is really nice for us, because then we can just keep moving fast, right? Like we're okay with giving away a little bit for the sake of moving quickly. So we'll see how that works out. But that's rolling out here in the next 5 or 6 weeks. So that's kind of TBD. We'll see how that goes. But we're testing out, obviously all the English speaking countries first, and then we'll roll out to Mexico and some other ones that we think have some promise.
Yeah.
Other than that, I would say retail is definitely also very promising for us. I know that other companies are raising a lot of money and leveraging retail. So I think we're going to start out with a store here in LA and see how it goes. And if it's profitable or if it's close to break even, we'll probably just start expanding to more. And just kind of, it also, other than just the net income that you get from that, it creates a nice little visual lift for the company. So you do see a bit of a lift on the digital side, which I didn't really expect. But from what we're hearing from all of our friends in retail, that's really a big part of it. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. We really haven't talked a lot about your customer. You noted your customer. Tell us a little bit about them. Is there a target demographic that you're currently serving, and can that be expanded as we talk about growth as well?
For sure. I would say that we're in the 25 to 55 male demo. We don't really have any plans for females anytime in the near future. Maybe if I sell the company, I'm sure whatever private equity company swallows us up will want to use that as a growth lever and do that. But I want to give guys a safe place. You know what I mean? I really want this to just be for them, and so that they can come here. But honestly, 30% of our revenue comes from females. It's females buying for their husbands, because
Yeah,
most females buy for their husbands if they're married, because the guys just don't want to deal with shopping, right? And they also want their guy to look better. And so if they can just buy a shirt and improve their husband's look and his confidence, then that's a win-win. But and that's really what we do. We sell confidence and empowerment, really not clothing, because these shirts, what they do is we get a ton of reviews and feedback from women who tell us about their husband just feeling so much better walking out the door, and historically being kind of self-conscious, and what this shirt's done for him is just really improved his attitude, and he doesn't feel so bad. He actually feels better walking out the door, and we get those messages every single day.
yeah,
So that's really who the customer is. I would say it's largely that 25 to 55.
interesting. And then my final question, Ryan, is more on a kind of a personal level. So, as a leader, as CEO of the company, you talked a little bit about creating this environment, particularly for your employees, where they don't want to go somewhere else, where you're giving them what they want, and then they'll work harder for you, and because they kind of feel that they're in a good place and they're invested in your particular brand, True Classic. Tell us a little bit about what you believe makes a good leader, and kind of the qualities for effective leadership today.
I think EQ is at the very top. I always go back to that, because I think if you don't have that, then you're just not going to be connected to the people around you. If you don't know what they want and you're not aware of it, and you can't really reverse engineer what makes them tick, then you're just shooting from the hip, and you're just kind of in your own world. And that's not a place I like to be. I like to be actively talking to people, working with people, surveying internally, figuring out what people want, what they don't want. A big part of, we brought this guy on, Ben, who's our chief business officer. He comes from Facebook, and he brought all these amazing policies and procedures in place when he came aboard, and it's just really lifted the culture internally. And it's really been great having him. But as far as like what I think the top skills are, I think obviously communication kind of goes along with EQ. Doing a lot of listening. I'm not big on micromanaging. I really love to give people autonomy, and I love to hire the right people and pay a lot for them, because I know that they're going to do the work, and I don't need to micromanage anybody. That doesn't mean I don't check in on things and I don't kind of manage things at a high level, but you really got to let people do what they want to do, especially in this day and age with COVID and people kind of staying home and working from home more. You got to give them that flexibility if you're going to compete in the job market these days, because most companies are just giving them complete freedom. So if you don't, you're just not going to get the best people. But I've learned a lot, over the years. I really didn't expect to be managing this large of a group of people. And it's been, I've gotten a lot better at less doing and just kind of more managing. I'm used to always doing and working and keeping my head down. But I realized that you have to really just kind of manage at a high level. You got to kind of let everyone do their thing. And then, just make sure that everyone feels inspired, and that I'm doing more like kind of one-on-ones with people and more performance reviews, which historically are not things that I've done well. I've definitely learned to just really hear people out more on a one-to-one basis, so that they feel like, you can really kind of tell me how you're feeling about anything, about what goals you're hitting, how things are going with your team. And it's great. It's just
Yeah,
great to really, kind of hear more from them, and kind of manage it that way. So
yeah. Trust that you've hired the
Right.
right people, right? And then kind of let them, to your point, work autonomously and do their jobs, that you having the faith that they're able to do that well.
Yeah, it's super important. I mean, that's what you pay them for, right? There's just no point in micromanaging. It's just it doesn't people don't like it
Yep.
ultimately.
Counterproductive as well, right?
Yeah, they want you to trust them too. That's the feeling they're going to get if you micromanage them. They're just going to feel like, why doesn't this guy trust me? Like, why doesn't he let me just be the expert? So that's what we like to do. Let him steer and be the expert.
Well, your formula is working, so congrats on that. I think we're
Sure.
just about out of time, so I want to take the opportunity to thank Ryan Bartlett, founder and CEO of D2C menswear brand True Classic, for joining us on today's episode of Total Retail Talks, telling us a little bit about the origin story of True Classic and as well as its growth over the years, and a little bit about what potentially could be to come in the future. So thank you for joining me, Ryan.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at mytotalretail.com/podcasts for show notes. Total Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review this podcast. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Total Retail Talks.